Welcome back to All King Creel's half-priced voodoo shop. Fuck, now I'm even starting to type this shit out now. Hey guys. It's me. Travis. Still alive unfortunately and losing my sanity little by a little every day. I know you guys probably have a lot of questions as to how the hell I'm even able to talk to you guys right now. And I promise I'll get into that. As painful as it is to talk about. But if you're new here, then allow me to introduce myself. My name is Travis. I work here at All King Creel's half-priced voodoo shop. And because of my own stupidity, I've ended up becoming a human puppet for my boss, King Creel. And when I mean puppet, I do mean puppet. I'm suspended by strings from the ceiling, and my face is white as chalk, and I've got stupid red cheeks painted on. During work hours my mind is sort of disconnected from my body. My body and mouth say things that my mind doesn't want to say. I'm basically the most disgusting thing in history. An overly cheery store clerk. Sometimes I want to punch myself with how sick and disgusting I sound. Being a stupid puppet for my boss. The only time I get to take back control of myself is when the shop is closed. Although whenever I try to leave through the doors I'm quickly taken over again and forced back to my post at the counter. And yes, I have tried to end it all. Whatever force is pulling on the strings attached to my body forces myself to end any attempt on my own life. So, I'm stuck here being the boss's puppet. Huzzah. Some of you asked if my parents ever came looking for me. And yes, they did. A couple of days after I was turned into a puppet I was standing at my counter. A stupid smile plastered on my face as I looked around with my button eyes. Quickly I stood stick straight when King Creel came out of his office. His stitched-up mouth was turned up into a smile as he approached me. "How are you doing, Travis my boy?" he asked me with a chuckle. Giving me a hard pat on the back. I turned my head to him and just smiled nice and wide back at him. "I'm doing fantastic, sir," I said happily. While internally I was screaming every curse word I knew at him. Wishing I could rip his stupid head off his shoulders and punt it down the basement with Mary. He chuckled and nodded at me. "Say, I need you to go into the basement for just a second. I left something down there when I was tending to Mary. Could you be a dear and go get it?" he asked me, standing back and offering me the key to the basement. Reaching out and taking it and giving him a little salute. "Sure thing, sir," I hummed. Walking over to the basement and opening it. While my body readily gave into his orders, in my head I thought of why the hell he was sending me down here. Nothing was important enough for me to go down here. And I got my answer the second I closed the door behind me. The rusty bell rang at the door, and I heard the sound of a couple of people coming in. And I heard the voice of my mother. "Are you King Creel?" she asked. Her tone was one of sorrow and insecurity. I turned on my heels quickly, staring back at the door. My mother was here. I reached out towards the door but found myself unable to close the small distance to touch the knob. I wanted to force myself to stretch my stupid hands just a couple of inches closer. But I couldn't. "Why yes, I am man." Creel chuckled. The sound of my rocking chair squeaking as he was no doubt sitting in it and rocking in it. "What can I do you for?" he asked my mother. "Our son went missing a few days ago. And we were wondering if you've seen him anywhere." My father spoke up. His heavy voice was also heavily covered in sadness and worry. I was just a couple of feet away from them, and I couldn't do anything to draw attention to myself. I opened my mouth to try and scream. But nothing came out of my throat but a long soft wheeze. Well, he was here the last day I had him scheduled to work. He left and that was the last I ever saw of him. Creel lied through his teeth. A tone of concern on those stitched-up lips of his. "I truly don't know where he is," he explained. "We understand. If you see or hear from him, please give us a call," my dad said to the man who was torturing me. A sheet of paper being heard from the other side of the door. And the sound of my mom crying softly. I was alive. I was right here. Open the fucking basement door. I sure will. He's a fine young lad. I do hope he turns up, Creole said to my parents. Soon their footsteps grew faint and the front door opened and closed. That rusty bell jangling and signaling the last I ever saw of my parents. Finally able to move again, I clawed at the basement door and opened it up. Oh, Travis. You just missed you mama and pops. Such nice people, worrying about their son. He chuckled when he saw my standing at the basement door, holding up a missing persons flyer at me, showing my old face. Before my button eyes, pale skin, painted cheeks, and my severed head getting stitched back on. Oh, that's too bad, I said in my happy tone, my mind practically screaming and begging to be let out of this prison. Is this what someone in a coma feels like? Or people who get trapped in their bodies and are unable to move? I'm sure they'd love to see you. Who knows? Maybe I'll pay them a visit one day. If you ever misbehave. After all, I know where they live now. He giggled, holding up the flyer of my past self and showing that my address was plastered onto it. You fucking monster. You won't have to worry about that at all, sir, I said, crossing my heart against my will towards him. I would never do something that stupid. I nodded, smiling as I was forced to turn back around and head down to the basement. Creole's giggles filling my ears as I descended into the dark depths. Finally arriving down into the basement, I looked around for whatever the hell it was that he had left down here. While I was down there, I saw the Voodoo King's old fiancée and murderer, Mary, the living human porcelain doll, who was currently busy chewing on the rotting corpse of one of the dead customers. She stopped and looked at me, pulling away with a large gray slice of meat in her mouth. Travis, what are you doing down here? She asked, quickly swallowing the meat in her mouth. Normally I'd be gagging and throwing up all over myself, but my body didn't react at all to that. Plus I'm always wearing a nice suit, and getting vomit off of this would be a bitch. He sent me down here for something. I sighed, finally having some control over myself as I walked over to her, looking at her and then at the corpse she was munching on. I won't blame her for that. A girl's gotta eat, you know. Oh, he must want his cane, she sighed, pointing over to the item laying on the floor near some cracked and broken porcelain. I nodded and walked over to the item, picking it up and looking at the item. It was a simple one made of some black wood with a wide orb handle. I'm guessing he beat you with it, I asked her, looking over to her and staring with my button eyes, finding myself hitting the orb against my palm. Yeah, she said simply, turning back to her chewing and ripping another chunk out of the decaying body. I looked at her and then down at the cane, sighing and trying to wrap my head around how the hell my life had gotten to this point. Should have fucking gone to college. Leaving Mary to her cannibalism, I started the path up the stairs. Getting up there, I handed the item to Creole and he smiled at me. Thank you, son, he hummed, taking it and looking down at it. Anything for you, sir, I said with a smile, shivering internally when his head jerked up to look at me with a quizzical look. Anything, huh? He asked me with a hum, stroking his chin and standing up quickly, putting both of his hands on my shoulders and giving them a hard squeeze. Like killing your parents for me? He asked me in a low growl. I froze. I couldn't. There was no way in hell I was going to do that. I opened my mouth to no doubt agree to him like the stupid doormat I had become. But instead, I grabbed him by the head and smashed my own into his, sending him sputtering backward. Oh, still have some fight in you, huh? He asked me with a chuckle, holding up the cane and bringing it down on my head, sending me stumbling to the floor like a doll. Because I am one. He raised it up to deliver another one to me when the door again opened and we both looked towards it. Is this a bad time? The customer asked. A girl wearing an oversized hoodie asked us. Creole looked down at me and then at her, placing the cane on the floor and walking over to her, the cane tapping along as he went over to her. Sorry, dear. What can I do for you? he asked with a hum. I, meanwhile, was forced back up by the strings and standing up nice and straight for our customer. Brushing myself off and heading back to the counter to stand there like the animatronic I basically was. You grant wishes, right? Can you get a guy to like me? She asked shyly. Creole chuckled and nodded slowly, wrapping an arm around her and pushing her over to the counter. Travis, be a dear and get Ms. Liz here the love potion, he asked of me with a giggle. Nodding to me, I quickly nodded back and reached out to give the woman the asked for the potion. God, I wish I could have talked her out of it. The love potion is probably the worst potion we sell here, especially if you're as vague as this girl was about it. She took it and looked at the vial it came in, looking at Creole dubiously and reading the back of the bottle. Smart girl. Nodding to herself, she opened it and quickly drank it, gagging at the taste but swallowing it all. She stood there for a bit recovering, and soon her phone went berserk. It vibrated like crazy and she pulled it out quickly, a smile spreading on her face when she saw it was from the guy she loved. She thanked the two of us and ran off, putting the phone to her ear and chuckling as she left the shop. The poor girl had no idea what she was getting into. Every single time someone uses the love potion, the person they love ends up killing them and doing weird shit to their body, saying that they love them so much they wanted to keep them always. Yeah, making a creepy human statue out of their body is totally showing love. Creole must want to marry me after what he did with me. Let's see what'll happen to her. She'll probably come running back here in no time. I'll keep you guys posted if she does end up back here. Creole must have been in a good mood because he didn't end up beating me again. Just going off to the office and closing the door, leaving me to stand there at my post. He doesn't go anywhere at night if you guys are wondering. He just stays in the office until the shop opens up again. But that gives me a chance to rest, curled up under the desk. No reason other than to cry. Well, my button eyes don't really produce tears, but my body does everything else that crying entails. I don't know how to get away from him, but there has to be a way. If I can smash my face into his, there has to be a way to be able to break the spell he has on me. I'll get out of here, and I'll rip his head off. I swear I will. And do be sure to check us out. King Creole has been talking about getting more employees. Hope to see some of you here.